They called him a beggar father-in-law the moment he arrived, mocking his cheap clothes and $3 watch. They didn't realize they were insulting the man who owned their company, and he's about to fire every single one of them. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. I sat in my sedan, staring at the dash clock. The green digits flickered. 5:58 p.m. In 2 minutes, I was supposed to walk into a high-rise apartment and meet the people who were going to be my family. My daughter Sarah had been glowing for months. She found her prince. His name was Derek Young. He worked in finance just like his mother and father. Sarah was a school teacher with a heart of gold, and she deserved the world. I wanted her to have it, but I also wanted to know if these people were real. I checked the rearview mirror. I looked like a man who had spent the last decade working a loading dock, not a man who owned the largest executive search firm in the Midwest. I was wearing an old gray sweater I bought for $10 and a pair of khakis with a coffee stain near the pocket. My shoes were scuffed. My watch was a $3 Timex from a church sale. It was the invisibility test. I wanted to see who they saw when they didn't see my bank account. I stepped out of the car. The evening air was crisp, smelling of lake water and expensive exhaust. I walked past the doorman. He gave me a look that suggested I was looking for the service entrance. I ignored him and hit the button for the 23rd floor. My pulse was steady. I had built a company worth millions by reading people. Today, I was the one being read. The elevator chimes. Sarah had messaged me the apartment number 3 times. She was nervous. I reached the door and took a breath. Before I could even knock, the door swung open. Sarah stood there, her smile tight. Dad. You're here. Come in, please. Then, a woman appeared behind her. She was blonde, every hair lacquered into a stiff helmet. She wore enough gold to fund a small college. Her eyes did a sweep of my body. It took exactly 3 seconds, from my scuffed shoes to my cheap sweater. She didn't hide the disgust. She turned her head and shouted back into the living room, "Oh, Sarah, honey, your beggar father-in-law is here." The words hit me like a physical blow. I didn't flinch, but I felt the temperature in the room drop. A man's laugh erupted from deeper in the apartment. It was loud and arrogant. Derek Young stepped into the foyer. He was 34, wearing a designer polo shirt, his arms crossed over his chest. He looked at me and let out a snort. Wow. So this is him. I mean, Sarah showed us photos, but I thought she was joking about the wardrobe. I stepped inside. The floor was white marble. Modern art hung on the walls, the kind that costs 5 figures, but looks like a mistake. Derek's father, a silver-haired man named Arthur, stood by the window with a glass of red wine. He looked at me with a mix of pity and annoyance. Sarah's face was turning bright red. She grabbed my arm, her fingers trembling. "Derek, stop it. Mom, don't say that." Derek just grinned. He walked closer, smelling of expensive cologne and overconfidence. "I hope you got something better for the wedding, man. That sweater looks like it came from a dumpster." "Seriously, did you find that in the trash?" I looked him in the eye. I kept my voice flat, conversational. Funny thing about dumpster diving, you learn to spot real trash pretty quickly. "Where do you folks work again?" Sarah mentioned something about the Silvercrest Group. The mother, Diane, straightened her back. Pride made her chin lift. "We are the Silvercrest Group's Chicago leadership. Arthur is the regional supervisor. I am the director of compliance. And Derek manages the mid-level accounts team. We handle the fortunes of people who actually care about their appearance." I nodded slowly. "Silvercrest. Right, I remember now. Thornton Executive Search placed all 3 of you there." Derek's grin faltered. His eyes narrowed. "What do you know about Thornton?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. I didn't look at the screen. I looked at the 3 of them. "I'm saying you're fired. All 3 of you, effective Monday morning." The room went silent. Arthur's wine glass slipped from his hand. It didn't break. It hit the thick white rug and sent a splash of deep red liquid across the marble entryway. The wine probably cost more than my car, but all I could see was the fear starting to leak into his eyes. Sarah let go of my arm. "Dad? What are you talking about? This isn't funny. It's not a joke, Sarah." I looked at Derek. His face had gone from smug to a weird shade of gray. You think you're untouchable because you sit in a glass office. You forgot who put you there. My agency has final placement approval for every executive role at Silvercrest. I signed your contracts, and those contracts have a very specific clause about professional conduct reflecting on the firm. This is illegal. Diane's voice climbed an octave. Her jewelry rattled as she shook her fist. We have employment laws in Illinois. You can't just fire people because you don't like their clothes. I stepped deeper into the room, my scuffed shoes clicking on the marble. Illinois is an at-will state, Diane. But more importantly, you are on a probationary performance period that I personally extended last month. I was giving you a chance to prove you were worth the $250,000 salary we negotiated for you. You just failed the test. Derek moved toward me, his chest puffed out. You're lying. You're just some old man in a Target sweater. You don't own Thornton. Nobody's seen the owner in years. He's a recluse. He's not a recluse, Derek. He's just careful about who he trusts. I checked my Timex. It's 6:15. By 9 a.m. Monday, your key cards won't work. Your health insurance will be a memory, and your reputation in the Chicago finance circle will be exactly what you called me. Trash. Sarah was crying now. Dad, please. They were just nervous. They didn't mean it. I looked at my daughter. My heart ached for her, but I couldn't let her marry into a nest of vipers. Sarah, they didn't know I was your father when I walked in. They saw a man they thought had nothing, and they chose to crush him for sport. That's not nerves. That's character. I turned toward the door. I had seen enough. The modern art, the marble, the expensive wine. It was all a facade. Behind it was a family of bullies who thought money was a shield. Arthur finally found his voice. Thornton, wait. Let's talk about this. We can apologize. We can make this right. I didn't turn around. You had your chance when you opened the door. Now you get to find out what it's like to be the person on the other side of the glass. I walked out. The doorman gave me the same look as before. I nodded to him, walked to my car, and sat in the dark. My hands started to shake. It wasn't fear. It was the weight of what I had just done to my daughter's life. My phone buzzed on the seat. It was a text from Sarah. How could you do this to me? I didn't answer. I pulled away from the curb. I had 48 hours to make sure the paperwork was airtight. By Monday, 3 people were going to learn that the beggar they insulted was the one who signed their paychecks. I drove to my office in the West Loop. The building was empty, the glass reflecting the city lights. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I didn't look at the termination files yet. Instead, I pulled up the internal security feed from the Young's building. I had a friend in building security. $200 in cash usually bought a lot of cooperation. I found the footage from 20 minutes ago. The camera in the hallway caught everything. I watched myself walk in. I watched the door open. I saw the look on Diane's face. But then I saw something I missed. While I was in the foyer, Derek had leaned over to his mother and whispered something. The audio was faint, but the lip-reading software I used for high-level negotiations didn't lie. He didn't say he was nervous. He said, "Let's see if we can get the old man to pay for the honeymoon before we kick him to the curb." The words on the screen felt like ice water in my veins. They weren't just bullies. They were predators. They had been planning to bleed me dry from the moment they heard Sarah's father might have a little bit of savings. They saw her as a paycheck and me as the bank. I closed the laptop harder than I intended. The sound echoed in the quiet office. I looked at the watch on the shelf next to my desk. It was a 1960s Belova I'd picked up at a rummage sale for $3. It kept perfect time. Some things you can't judge by the packaging, but you can always judge them by the gears. I called Marcus Webb. He was the HR director at Silvercrest. I'd placed him there 6 years ago, and we had a relationship built on mutual respect. He answered on the second ring, despite it being a Saturday night. Orville, it's late. Everything okay? Marcus, I need you to pull the files on the Young trio. Arthur, Diane, and Derek. I want the full compliance audit from last quarter, not the summary, the raw data. There was a long pause on the other end. That's a heavy lift for a weekend. Is there a problem? They are being released, Marcus. Performance and conduct. I'll have the formal notice on your desk by 8 a.m. Monday. But I need the audit now. I have a feeling the conduct isn't the only thing that's rotten. I could hear Marcus typing. I'll send it to your private server. Orville, be careful. Arthur has friends on the board. I don't care about his friends, Marcus. I care about my daughter. I spent the rest of the night digging. The numbers didn't lie. Silvercrest had been losing small amounts of money from the mid-level accounts for months. It was clever. Small enough to miss in a cursory glance, but consistent. Derek was the manager. Diane was the director of compliance. Arthur was the supervisor. It was a closed loop, a family business of theft. By 4 a.m., I had enough to do more than just fire them. I had enough to put them in a courtroom. My left hand was acting up, the joint stiff from stress. I rubbed it, staring at the screen. I could end this now. I could call the police, but I wanted them to feel the fall first. The sun started to rise over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. I went home, showered, and waited. My phone rang at noon. It was Sarah. "I'm coming over," she said. Her voice was flat, empty. 10 minutes later, she was in my kitchen. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Her mascara was smudged and her hair was a mess. She sat at the table and stared at her hands. "They told me everything, Dad. They said you're a monster. They said you're destroying their lives because of a joke. Derek is devastated. He said he was just trying to be one of the guys, trying to joke around with you." I sat across from her. I slid my laptop toward her. I didn't say a word. I just hit play on the hallway footage. I let her hear the whisper. Sarah watched it once, then twice. She didn't move. She didn't cry. She just stared at the screen as Derek's voice repeated the words about the honeymoon and kicking me to the curb. "Is that the man you want to marry, Sarah? The man who sees your father as a target?" She looked up at me. Her eyes were hard now. "What do we do?" "We don't do anything," I said. "I already did it. But there's more." I showed her the audit. I explained the missing money. I watched as the realization hit her that the last year of her life had been a lie. She wasn't just a girlfriend. She was the inside track to a retirement fund. "I need to go," she said. She stood up, her movements mechanical. "Where are you going?" "To get my things. And to give him back his ring." I let her go. I had to. She had to see the end of it for herself. But I sent a car to follow her. I wasn't taking any chances. By Sunday night, the trap was set. The termination emails were scheduled for 11 p.m. It was cold, calculated, and necessary. But then my phone buzzed with an unknown number, a local area code. "You made a big mistake, old man," the text read. "This isn't over. You think you can destroy us? We know where you live. We know where Sarah is." The threat was the last thing they should have done. I didn't call the police. I called a woman named Petra Moss. She was a former FBI investigator who now worked in the private sector. I'd used her before for high-stakes background checks. "Petra," I said, "I need a full sweep, and I need a shadow on my daughter. The Youngs are getting desperate." Monday morning arrived with a gray drizzle. I was in my office at 7 a.m. The building felt different today, like the air was charged with static. Marcus Webb walked in at 8:15. He looked like he'd aged 5 years over the weekend. The emails went out, Orville, all 3 of them. I've already had 12 calls from the board. Arthur is screaming about a lawsuit. Diane is threatening to go to the press. "Let them scream," I said. "Did you see the audit data I sent?" Marcus nodded. He sat down and rubbed his face. "It's bad. It's not just theft. It's fraud. They've been padding their commissions by faking account growth. If the clients find out, Silvercrest is dead. Then, we make sure the clients don't find out until we have a solution. I want every person I've placed there in the last 5 years to form a temporary oversight committee. We fix this internally. Then, we hand the Youngs to the feds on a silver platter." My phone rang. It was the doorman at my office building. "Mr. Thornton? There are 3 people here, a Mr. and Mrs. Young and their son. They're demanding to see you. They're making a scene." "Send them up," I said. Marcus looked at me. "Are you sure?" "Derek looks like he's ready to swing at someone." "I'm sure." 5 minutes later, the doors to my office burst open. Arthur was in the lead, his face a deep, unhealthy purple. Diane was behind him, her designer suit wrinkled, her hair finally out of place. Derek brought up the rear. He looked wild-eyed, his hands clenched into fists. "You son of a bitch," Arthur screamed. He slammed his hands onto my mahogany desk. "You can't do this. We have contracts. We have tenure." I didn't stand up. I didn't even look away from my monitor. "You had contracts, Arthur. Those were terminated for cause at 11 p.m. last night. You are currently trespassing." Diane pushed forward. Her voice was shaking with rage. "We'll sue you for everything you have. We'll take this agency. We'll take your house. You think you can humiliate us and get away with it? We are the leadership of this industry." I looked at her then. I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms. "You are the leadership of nothing. You are thieves. I have the audit, Diane. I have the records of the $200 you took from the retirement fund of a 70-year-old widow every month for 3 years. I have the fake commission reports Derek signed." The room went cold. Derek stepped back, his bravado vanishing instantly. "The fake reports? How did you—" "I own the firm that placed you, Derek. I have access to everything. I didn't just fire you because you called me a beggar. I fired you because you are criminals who are using my daughter to get to my assets." Arthur's hands were shaking now. He looked at his wife, then at his son. "Orville, let's be reasonable. We can pay it back. We can make a deal." "There is no deal, Arthur. I'm not just ending your careers. I'm ending your lifestyle." I hit a button on my desk phone. "Security, you can come in now." 4 large men in suits stepped through the side door. They didn't have to say anything. The Youngs knew the game was over. But as they were being let out, Derek turned back. His face was twisted in a sneer. "You think you won? Sarah still loves me. She'll never forgive you for this." I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Sarah is the one who found the deleted files on your home computer last night, Derek. She's the one who gave me the final piece of the puzzle." Derek's jaw dropped. The doors closed behind them, and for the first time in 3 days, I felt like I could breathe. But the victory felt like ashes. I had protected my daughter, but I had also shattered her world. I looked at the $3 Timex on my wrist. 10:45 a.m. Marcus stood up. "What now?" "Now we wait for the second wave. People like the Youngs don't just go away. They rot from the inside out." The fallout was faster than I expected. By Tuesday afternoon, the news of the internal restructuring at Silvercrest had hit the wires. My agency was flooded with calls. I spent hours on the phone, calming clients, moving pieces on the board. I was the Darth Vader of HR, and for once, I didn't mind the title. I hadn't heard from Sarah all day. That worried me more than any lawsuit. I called her 3 times. No answer. I called Petra. "Is she okay?" "She's at a hotel," Petra said. "She hasn't left the room since this morning. But there's someone else. Derek's car has been circling the block for the last 2 hours. I felt my heart skip a beat. Get her out of there. Now." "I'm on it," Petra said. I didn't wait. I grabbed my coat and headed for the elevator. I was halfway to the parking garage when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered it. "I told you it wasn't over, old man." It was Derek. His voice sounded thin, ragged, like he was on the edge of a breakdown. "Where is my daughter, Derek? She's with me. Or she will be soon. You took my life. I'm taking yours." I reached my car, my breath coming in short bursts. "If you touch her, I will find you, and I won't call the police." "I'm at the park," he said, "the one with the pond, where I proposed. If you want to see her again, you come alone. No police, no security." The line went dead. I didn't think. I didn't call Petra back. I just drove. The city passed in a blur of gray and neon. I reached the park in 10 minutes. It was nearly dark, the streetlights flickering on. The pond was at the center, surrounded by weeping willows. I saw his car first, a white Audi. The engine was running. I pulled up behind it and jumped out. "Derek!" I shouted. He stepped out from behind a tree. He wasn't holding a gun. He was holding a folder. A thick manila folder. He looked like a ghost. His polo shirt was stained, his hair a bird's nest. "Where is she?" I demanded. He laughed, a high, brittle sound. "She's not here, Orville. She was never here. She wouldn't even pick up the phone." I felt a wave of relief so strong I almost fell. Then the anger took over. "You lied to me. You threatened her just to get me here?" "I needed you to feel it," he said. He held up the folder. "This is everything. Every text Sarah sent me, every photo, every promise. You think you saved her? You just made her a victim." He threw the folder into the pond. The papers scattered, floating on the dark water like white leaves. "I'm leaving," he said. "My parents are gone. The feds are at the house. But you get to live with the fact that you're the reason she's alone." He got into his car and sped away, his tires screaming on the pavement. I stood by the water, watching the memories of my daughter's life sink into the mud. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "I'm at the office, Dad. I'm waiting for you." I drove back, my mind racing. When I walked into the lobby, she was sitting on the bench by the fountain. She looked older. The softness in her face was gone, replaced by a weary strength. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry." She stood up and walked to me. She didn't hug me. She just looked at me. "You were right about them," she said. "But I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more tests, Dad. No more invisibility. If you want to protect me, do it with the truth. Not with a gray sweater." I looked at her, and then I looked at the watch on my wrist. The $3 Timex. I reached down and unbuckled the strap. I walked over to the trash can in the lobby and dropped it in. "I promise," I said. We walked out together into the Chicago night. The Youngs were gone, their empire of lies dismantled, but as we reached the sidewalk, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. It was Petra. "Orville," she said. "You need to see this." She handed me a tablet. On the screen was a live feed from a casino in Nevada. There was Derek sitting at a high-stakes table, a pile of chips in front of him, but he wasn't alone. Sitting next to him, laughing and drinking champagne, was the board member Marcus had warned me about. The game wasn't over. It had just moved to a bigger table. The neon lights of the Nevada casino glowed on the screen, a world away from the rain-slicked streets of Chicago. I stood on the sidewalk with Sarah, the engine of Petra's SUV idling nearby. Seeing Derek with a board member from Silvercrest changed everything. This wasn't just a family of petty thieves. They had inside help to hide their tracks. My daughter's face went pale in the glow of the tablet. "Dad, if he's with the board, the lawsuit isn't just about the firing anymore," she whispered. I nodded, my jaw tight. They are trying to flip the narrative to save their own skins. I turned to Petra. "I need you in Las Vegas by morning. Find out exactly how much that board member knows and what Derek promised him." Sarah grabbed my hand as Petra pulled away. "I'm coming with you to the office. We aren't waiting for Monday anymore. We spent the next 6 hours in the war room." Sarah, with her teacher's eye for detail, began cross-referencing the audit I'd pulled with the board member's voting record. At 3:15 a.m., she tapped a pen against a stack of printouts. "Look at this, Dad. Every time Derek's team moved money, this board member approved a software update that masked the transaction." The phone buzzed. It was an email from an encrypted address. I opened it to find a series of photos from Petra. Derek wasn't just gambling. He was meeting with a local developer. They were planning to use the stolen Silvercrest funds to buy into a new luxury complex under a shell company name. "He's trying to wash the money," I said. The office door opened, and Marcus Webb walked in, carrying 2 trays of coffee. He looked at the whiteboards covered in strings and photos. "I just got word from the firm's legal team. Arthur Young filed an emergency injunction in Nevada to freeze our access to their internal servers. They're claiming we tampered with the audit. They're trying to bury the evidence before the feds can verify it," Marcus added, setting the coffee down. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city I had spent 30 years building a reputation in. The Youngs thought they could outrun me by moving the goalposts to another state. They didn't realize that in the world of executive search, my network had no borders. "Marcus, call our contacts at the Nevada Gaming Commission," I ordered. "If Derek is using Silvercrest funds at those tables, I want his accounts flagged for money laundering before the sun comes up." Sarah looked at me, a new fire in her eyes. "And what about the board member?" "We don't go after him yet," I said. "We let him think he's winning. We let him lead us right to the rest of the partners. Just then, my phone rang. It was an unknown number from a 702 area code. I put it on speaker. "Orville, it's Arthur," the voice said, sounding far too calm. "We're sitting in a suite at the Bellagio. We have the injunction. Any further attempt to access our data will be a felony. Drop the audit, give us a $5 million severance package, and we'll let Sarah keep her dignity." I felt Sarah's hand tighten on the back of my chair. I leaned into the phone. "Arthur, you're 62 years old," I said. "Do you really want to spend your retirement in a federal prison because you couldn't stop yourself from insulting a man in a gray sweater?" There was a long silence on the other end. "The choice is yours, Arthur, but I've already sent Petra to meet your developer friend." The line went dead. By Wednesday morning, the pressure was mounting. The Silvercrest board was in an uproar, split between those who trusted me and those who were being paid by the Youngs. I was sitting in my office when Diana Chen, my PR consultant, walked in with a grim expression. "The Youngs just released a statement to the Chicago press," she said, sliding a tablet across my desk. "They're claiming Sarah was in on the embezzlement and that you're using this fake audit to cover for her." I stood up so fast my chair hit the wall. "They're targeting my daughter now?" "It's a classic smear," Diana said, her voice clinical. "They're trying to make you look too biased to be trusted. If Sarah is a suspect, your audit becomes fruit of the poisonous tree." Sarah walked in from the break room, her face set in a mask of cold determination. "I heard," she said. "They think I'm a weak link. They think I'll crumble to save myself." I looked at her, my heart heavy with the weight of the battle. "Sarah, we can step back. We can let the lawyers handle this from here." "No," she said, stepping closer. "We go public. We release the footage of the Beggar comments and the honeymoon texts tonight. We show the world exactly who they are before they can finish their lie." Diana nodded. "It's the nuclear option, Orville. It will be messy, but it breaks their narrative instantly." I looked at the folder Petra had sent from Nevada. It contained more than just financial records. It had a list of the previous women Derek had targeted. Each one had been left financially ruined after their fathers disappointed the Young family. "Do it," I said. The post went live at 6 p.m. I watched the engagement numbers climb. The Beggar father-in-law video went viral within an hour. The contrast between the Youngs' polished public image and their private cruelty was too sharp for the public to ignore. By 9 p.m., the board member who had been seen with Derek in Nevada resigned via email. The shell company they were using was flagged by the bank. I was sitting on my porch, the first quiet moment I'd had in days, when a car pulled up. It wasn't the Youngs. It was Barton Young, Arthur's brother. He walked up the steps, looking exhausted. "I'm not here to fight, Orville," he said, sitting on the top step. "My brother is a fool. He's destroyed the family name for a lifestyle he couldn't afford." "What do you want, Barton?" I asked, my voice weary. "I want to give you the passwords to the private server Derek used to hide the transactions," he said, handing me a slip of paper. "He thinks he's safe in Nevada, but he left the backup drive in my basement in Chicago." "Why are you doing this?" "Because I have a daughter too," he said, looking at me with a sad smile. "And I wouldn't want her marrying a man like my nephew." The backup drive was the final nail in the coffin. It contained a roadmap of every dollar stolen from Silvercrest over the last 3 years. But more importantly, it had the communications between Arthur and the board members he had bribed. Thursday morning, the FBI raided the Young's suite in Las Vegas and their apartment in Chicago simultaneously. The image of Arthur and Diane being let out in handcuffs, still wearing their designer clothes, was on every news cycle. I sat in my office with Sarah and Marcus. The Silvercrest board had called an emergency session to appoint a new leadership team. They wanted me to take an interim seat. I turned them down, I said, sipping a coffee that was finally hot. "I'm a recruiter, not a director. I'll help you find the right people, but I'm done playing their game." Sarah looked at me, a soft smile finally returning to her face. "What about Derek?" "He's in a holding cell in Nevada," I said. "The feds are looking at interstate wire fraud and money laundering. He won't be checking the ROI on any rings for a very long time." We spent the afternoon at the Gauge, the same coffee shop where the confrontation had happened. I was wearing a clean suit today, but I still felt like the man in the gray sweater. The lesson wasn't about the money or the power. It was about the cost of keeping one's integrity in a world of mirrors. Sarah looked out at the street. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" "No," I said. "People like that only understand loss. They never learn about character." As we were leaving, my phone buzzed one last time. It was a message from an unknown number in Nevada. "You won the round, old man," it read. But the game isn't over. I looked at the screen, then at my daughter. I didn't feel the surge of adrenaline I expected. I just felt a deep, resonant peace. I deleted the message and put the phone in my pocket. "Let's go home, Sarah," I said. The 3 months that followed were quiet. The lawsuit was settled, the Youngs were awaiting trial, and Silvercrest was under new, honest management. I had traded my watch collection for a few simple, reliable pieces. I was in my kitchen on a Saturday evening, the same way this all started. Sarah was there, helping me chop vegetables for dinner. We didn't talk about the Youngs anymore. We talked about her new classroom and the trip to Kenya she was planning to visit her sister Willa. The doorbell rang. I froze for a second, the old instincts kicking in. I walked to the door and opened it. It was a delivery man with a small box. No return address. I took it to the table and opened it with Sarah watching. Inside was a $3 Timex watch, identical to the one I had thrown away in the office lobby months ago. There was no note. "Is it from him?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. I picked up the watch and held it to my ear. It was ticking, steady and mechanical. "It doesn't matter who it's from," I said, setting it down on the counter. I walked back to the stove and stirred the chicken. The revenge was a fire that had burned everything in its path, but the garden was finally starting to grow back. "Dad, look," Sarah said, pointing to the window. Outside, the first snow of the season was beginning to fall, dusting the Chicago streets in a clean white blanket. The city was quiet, the noise of the scandal finally buried under the winter. I sat down at the table with my daughter, the china plates clinking softly in the warm kitchen. I wasn't the beggar father-in-law, and I wasn't just the boss. I was a father who had done what was necessary, and for the first time in my life, that was enough. We ate in silence, the only sound the steady ticking of the cheap watch on the counter. It kept perfect time. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.